As the bandit walked down the road, Yujan Owl held his breath and didn't move a muscle. Spotted Neck chose a place right in front of him to take a piss. The foul odor hit Yujan Owl full in the face. With his hand on his sword, he was thinking it would be so easy to put an end to this famous bandit chief. His muscles tensed, but then he had second thoughts. He had no grudge against Spotted Neck, who was a thorn in the side of County Magistrate Nine Dreams Cao, the man who had given Yujan Ao 200 lashes with a shoe sole. That was reason enough to spare Spotted Neck, but he was pleased to think I could have killed the famous bandit chief Spotted Neck if I'd wanted to. Spotted Neck never learned of this brush with death, nor did he imagine that within 2 years he would die stark naked in the Blackwater River at the hands of this same young fellow. After relieving himself, he hitched up his pants and walked off. Yujan Ao jumped to his feet and walked into the sleeping village, stepping lightly so as not to awaken the dogs. When he reached the Shan's gate, he held his breath as he familiarized himself with the surroundings. The Shan family lived in a row of 20 buildings, divided into 2 compounds by an interior wall and surrounded by an outer wall with 2 gates. The distillery was in the eastern compound, while the family lived in the western compound, in which there were 3 side rooms on the far edge. There were also 3 side rooms on the edge of the eastern compound, which served as bunkhouses for the distillery workers. In addition, a tent in the eastern compound accommodated a large millstone and the 2 big black mules that turned it. Finally, there were 3 connecting rooms at the southern edge of the eastern compound with a single door facing south. That was where the wine was sold. Yujan Ao couldn't see over the wall, so he quickly scaled it, making scraping noises that woke the dogs on the other side, who began to bark loudly. After retreating about half the distance an arrow flies, he hunkered down in the square where the Shans dried their sorghum. He needed a plan. The pleasant aroma from a pile of sorghum husks and another of leaves caught his attention. Kneeling down beside the dry husks, he took out his stone and flint and lit them. But no sooner had they ignited than he had another idea, and he smothered the flames with his hands. He walked over to the pile of leaves, some 20 paces distant, and set fire to it. Less compact than the husks, they would burn more quickly and be easier to extinguish. On the windless night, the Milky Way stretched across the sky, surrounded by thousands of twinkling stars. Flames quickly leaped into the air, lighting up the village as though it were daytime. "Fire!" he yelled at the top of his lungs. "Fire!" Then he hid among the shadows of the western wall around the family compound. Tongues of flame licked the heavens, crackling loudly and setting the fire dogs to barking. The distillery workers in the eastern compound, startled out of their sleep, began to shout. The gate banged open, and a dozen or so half-naked men came rushing out. The western gate also opened, and the wizened old man with the pitiful little queue stumbled out, screaming and wailing. 2 big yellow dogs flew past him towards the raging fire and raised a howl. "Fire! Put it out!" The old man was nearly in tears. The distillery hands rushed back into the compound, snatched up buckets on poles, and ran to the well. After shedding his straw rain cape, Yujan Ao crept along the base of the wall and entered the western compound, flattening up against the Shan's screen wall to watch the men scurry back and forth. One of them dumped a bucketful of water on the fire, the stream of liquid looking like a piece of white silk in the glare of the flames, in whose heat it curled and twisted. They poured bucketful after bucketful of water onto the fire, high arcing waterfalls 1 minute and puffs of cotton the next, forming a scene of exquisite beauty. A prudent voice of reason called out, "Let it burn, master. It'll soon burn itself out." Put it out! Put it out!" He was in tears now. Hurry up and put it out. That's enough mule fodder for a whole winter." With no time to waste on the scene outside, Eugenal slipped into the house, where he was met by an overwhelming dampness. His hair stood on end. A mildewy voice emerged from inside the room to the west. "Dad, what's burning?" Having entered the house after staring at the flames, Eugenal was forced to wait until his eyes had adjusted to the darkness. When the voice repeated the question, he headed towards it. The room was lit up by the glare through the paper window, making it easy for him to see the long, flat face on the pillow. He reached out and held down the head, which cried out in alarm. Who are you?" Two claws dug into the back of Eugenal's hand as he drew his sword and buried it in the pale skin of the long, thin neck. A breath of cool air escaped onto his wrist, followed by hot, sticky blood that gloved his hand. He felt like throwing up. Fearfully, he took his hand away. The wrinkled flat head was convulsing on the pillow, golden blood spurting from the neck. He tried wiping his hand on the bedding, but the harder he wiped, the stickier it got, and the stronger feelings of nausea grew. Grasping the slimy sword in his hand, he turned and ran into the outer room. There he scooped a handful of straw out of the stove to clean off his hand and his sword, which glinted in the light and seemed to come alive. Every single day, he had engaged in secret swords play with the weapon given to him by little Cheng the blacksmith. And each time he heard the pillow talk emerging from his mother's room, he sheathed and unsheathed it over and over. Villagers began taunting him by calling him Junior Monk, to which he reacted with a blood-curdling glare. The sword now lay beneath his pillow, keeping him awake at night with high-pitched shrieks. He knew the time had come. The full moon was hidden behind dense leaden clouds that night, and as the villagers were falling asleep, a light rain began to fall. The scattered drops slowly soaking the ground and filling the hollows with silvery water. The monk opened the door and walked in under a yellow oilcloth umbrella. From the vantage point of his room, he watched the monk fold his umbrella and saw his shiny, bald pate as he unhurriedly scraped the mud from the soles of his shoes on the threshold. He heard his mother ask, "What are you doing here at this time of night?" "I had to say a seventh-day funeral mass for the mother of Man Biter in West Village." "I mean, why so late? I didn't think you'd come." "Why not?" "It's raining. If it had been raining daggers, I'd have come with a pot over my head. Get in here and be quiet about it." "Does your belly still hurt?" the monk asked softly as he entered her room. "Not so bad." "Ah, what's wrong?" "The boy's dad has been dead nearly 10 years, and look what I've become. I don't know if I'm up or I'm down." "Be up. I'll chant a sutra for you." He didn't close his eyes that night. As he listened to the shrieks of the sword beneath his pillow, to the patter of the rain outside, to the even breathing of the sleeping monk, and to his mother as she talked in her sleep, he sat up in alarm when he heard the strange laugh of an owl in a nearby tree. After dressing, he picked up the sword and stood with his ear cocked in the doorway of the room where his mother and the monk slept. His heart was a white wasteland, desolate and empty. Gently, he opened the door and walked out into the yard, where he looked up into the sky. The leading clouds were lighter than before, and a glimmer of early dawn light was visible. A gentle rain was still falling, slow and unhurried, silently moistening the earth and spattering weakly as it landed in puddles. He followed the winding road to Tianqi Monastery, which ran about 3 li and crossed a tiny brook on black stepping stones. During daylight hours, the brook was so clear you could count the tiny fish and shrimp on the sandy bottom, but now it was gray and hazy under the thin mist, and the sound of splashing rainwater made him sorrowful and anxious. The stones were wet and slippery. The glimmering water was rising. He was mesmerized by the sight of ripples as the water struck the stones beneath his feet. The smooth, sandy edge of the brook was lined by flower-laden pear trees. After fording the brook, he turned into the pear grove, where the sandy ground was firm yet slightly springy. The white pear blossoms poking through the mist were dazzling, but their redolence was snuffed out by the chilled air. He located his father's grave in the depth of the pear grove, covered with weeds that hid a dozen or more treacherous holes buried into the ground by mice. Although he tried hard to recall his father's face, all he could conjure up was the faint image of a tall, skinny man with swallow skin and a light, wispy mustache. After returning to the edge of the brook, he hid behind one of the trees and stared blankly at white ripples where the water struck the black stepping stones. The sky, beginning to suffuse with light, had grown paler. The clouds parted to reveal the outline of the little road. The monk walked quickly up the road under the yellow oilcloth umbrella that obscured his head. There were tiny water stains on his green cassock. Raising the hem with one hand and holding his umbrella high with the other, he crossed the brook, his rotund figure twisting as he stepped from stone to stone. Now that his pale, puffy face was visible, Eugenal gripped the sword and listened to its high-pitched shriek. His wrist ached and began to turn numb. His fingers started to twitch. After fording the brook, the monk let go of the hem of his cassock and stomped his feet, splashing his sleeve with mud, which he flicked off with his fingernail. This fair-skinned monk, who had prided himself on always looking tidy and fresh, exuded a pleasant soapy odor, which Eugenal could smell as he watched him fold his umbrella and shake off the water before slipping it under his arm. The 12 round burns on his pale scalp sparkled. Eugenal recalled seeing his mother caress the scalp with both hands as though she were stroking a Buddhist treasure, while he laid his head in her lap like a contented infant. By now the monk was so close he could hear his labored breathing. He was barely able to grip the sword handle, which was as slippery as a loach. He was drenched with sweat. His eyes were blurry, and he was getting lightheaded. He was afraid he might faint. As the monk passed by, he spat a gulp of sticky phlegm, which hung there sickeningly, giving rise to all sorts of nauseating thoughts in Eugenal's mind. He inched closer, his head throbbing painfully. His temples felt like mallets pounding on a taut drum inside his head. The sword seemed to enter the monk's rib cage on its own. The monk stumbled a few steps before grabbing the trunk of a pear tree to steady himself and turned to look at his assailant. There was a pain in the monk's pitiful eyes and a keen sense of regret in his heart. He said nothing as he slid slowly down the tree trunk to the ground. When Eugenal pulled his sword out from the monk's rib cage, a flow of lovely warm blood was released, soft and slippery like the wing feathers of a bird. The built-up water on the pear tree finally gave way and splashed down on the sandy ground, bringing dozens of petals with it. A small whirlwind rose up deep in the pear grove, and he later recalled smelling the delicate fragrance of pear blossoms.